Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Scott Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I don't think that there would be any New Zealanders, either pool owners or non-pool owners, that would consider for 1 minute that the original legislation that was set up nearly 30 years ago was not well intentioned. The statistics for young New Zealanders who were drowning at the time were truly appalling, and something needed to be done to remedy that. But as is often the case with good intentions, sometimes the road to ultimate result can be paved with all kinds of fraught difficulties and potholes and problems along the way. And so, sir, it became very obvious relatively quickly after the passing of the original legislation in 1987 that there were some frustrating inconsistencies with the legislation. And sir, as someone who has owned a couple of houses over the years that have had swimming pools, and when I had young children who were using those swimming pools, I became completely frustrated with the process and inconsistency that occurred in terms of compliance with a very good, well-intentioned piece of legislation. And so when you have a problem that is trying to be solved by legislation that is well-intentioned, but the net result is one of frustration and inconsistency for the people who are trying to make that legislation work, who are the pool owners, who understand the risks for young children and young neighbours and things like that, and people like that who might be not able to be watched every second of every minute of every hour of every day by their parents or caregivers, then there are enormous difficulties in making that piece of legislation work. And so this piece of sensible, pragmatic legislation that is being proposed in this bill, I think, sir, comes as keenly awaited by many thousands of swimming pool owners across the country. It's a sensible, pragmatic solution to what has been a frustrating and inconsistent piece of legislation for nearly 30 years. Frustrating and inconsistent, but not poorly intentioned, as I said. So this piece of legislation, the aim is to repeal the 1987 Fencing of Swimming Pools Act, and I would say not before time. And then to include this in the building bill also makes perfect sense as far as I can see. So at the moment, the current rules are confused, they are inconsistent, they are treated differently in different parts of the country. One local council will do checks more regularly than another local council. There will be inconsistencies about how gates closure rates are measured and heights and all those sorts of things, and there are inconsistencies to do with the changes or the types of fencing or barriers required. And so, sir, I am delighted that this piece of legislation will provide a greater degree of certainty and consistency across the country. And as I said, that's not before time. The practical approach to spa pools, I think, and hot tubs is also something that will be welcomed by people that own that. And one of the annoying and frustrating aspects of the spa pool and hot tub areas for people who have those products is that they've been required to get separate consents for those. And I understand that in this legislation, sir, the intention is to remove the requirement for consents to be required for the installation and use of hot tubs and spa pools, and that will come as a welcome measure on behalf of people who own those devices. But more so, sir, will be the requirement that lockable and permanent lids or covers for hot tubs and spa pools will now be a method by which the legislation can be met and provided for, and that is also a sensible and pragmatic approach. This bill will reduce compliance costs across the country by many millions of dollars, I suspect, over the course of its duration. The costs associated to swimming pool owners and spa pool owners over the years have been quite enormous. We understand, obviously, that the gains that have been made in terms of saving lives from drowning have been very, very good, but it comes at a high level of frustration and cost. So to have those frustrations removed and the costs minimised, I think will be very, very welcome. I'm sure that we're going to get an awful lot of submissions at Select Committee, notwithstanding that this is, I hope, something that will be treated across the House in a non-controversial way, because I think that there will be a large number of both organisations and individual swimming pool and spa pool owners who will want to make the points that they have found this existing legislation frustrating and difficult to work with. So, Sir, I'm very much looking forward to chairing the committee as we go through this process in the House. I think that this bill is, as I say, keenly awaited by many thousands of people who own and operate swimming pools, hot tubs and spas. It's a timely and useful piece of legislation that I think will relieve the frustrations of a great number of people, whilst at the same time not removing in any way the obligations of those people to ensure that they are safe and that our young children in particular are protected from the risks of drowning in unnecessary circumstances. Sir, I commend this bill to the House and I'm looking forward to it progressing through the House.